Hi, just in case you're wondering who I am, I'm Joanne. I'm the administrator at Austin House and I work with Graham. Question 1. In December 2015, which pop legend was remembered 30 years after his murder? Question 2. Who wrote the novel You Only Live Twice? Question 3. Which English county has a border with only one other county? What collective name is given to the structure of bones in the body? Question 5. The drink port takes its name from which town? Question 6. What colour is normally associated with...
Can't remember. I can't remember the words. What is it? What is it? Ecological. Ecological.
Can I just say?
Next question. Next question. Next question.
Question 7. What is the hardest substance known to man? Question 8. Which people are associated with the Jolly Roger flag? Question 9. What is the French word for number 2? Alphabetically, which is the second of the 12 calendar months?
Hi, good evening. I'm Julie. This is Kevin. We work for Graham, although I should say Graham and myself work for Kevin. And the word that was mentioned earlier should have been ecological. So here we go with your questions. Number 11. With which port do we associate with a half Nelson? Sorry, with which sport, should I say, do we associate with a half Nelson? I'm going to keep going because I don't want to stop. Number 12. In a Steven Spielberg movie, if A stands for artificial, what did I stand for? Question 13. In cricket, which team won the Ashes in 2013? Question 14. Which country did the Paso Doble dance originate in? Question 15. What type of food can be pilau? Question 16. In which American city is a 500-mile motor race run annually? Question 17. Which cartoon cat never manages to catch Tweety Pie? Question 18. Which is the busiest ferry passenger port in Britain? And question 19. What kind of animal is a hind? And question 20. What can pass through something if it is translucent? And bye.
Hi, here's the answers to your quiz. Number 1. In December 2015, which pop legend was remembered 35 years after his murder? John Lennon. Number 2. Who wrote the novel You Only Live Twice? Ian Fleming. 3. Which English county has a border with only one other county? Cornwall. Number 4. What collective name is given to the structure of bones in the body? Skeleton. 5. The drink port takes its name from which town? Oporto. 6. What colour is normally associated with
Ecological.
groups? Green. 7. What is the hardest substance known to man? Diamond. 8. Which people are associated with the Jolly Roger flag? Pirates. 9. What is the French word for the number 2? Dieu. Question 10. Alphabetically, which is the second of the 12 calendar months? August.
Well, hi again from Kevin and myself, and here we go with the rest of your answers. Number 11. With which sport do we associate a half Nelson? Wrestling. Number 12. In a Steven Spielberg movie, if A stood for artificial, what does I stand for? And this is questionable in this office. Intelligence. Number 13. In cricket, which team won the Ashes in 2013? England, of course. 14. Which country did the Paso Doble dance originate in? Spain. Number 15. What type of food can be pilau? And if you like your Indians, you'll know it's rice. Number 16. In which American city is a 500-mile motor race run annually? The Indianapolis.
Indianapolis.
Indianapolis. Number 17. Which cartoon cat manages never to catch Tweety Pie? Sylvester. Number 18. Which is Britain's busiest ferry passenger port? And of course, it's the White Cliffs of Dover. Number 19. What kind of animal is a hind? A deer. And question 20. What can pass through something if it is translucent? Light. Yes.
Thank you to both ladies for reading the questions, to both Joanne and Julie, and of course the foreman, Kevin. Good night, God bless.
Hi everybody. On the 16th of March 2020, Matt Hancock went into the House of Commons and informed MPs that all unnecessary social contact should cease. 12 months on, these 6 little words continue not only to limit the practicalities of our day-to-day existence, but they're actually shaping our future. In sharing my experience of trying to adapt to a COVID-19 world with you this evening, I am aware there will be a synergy as we've all needed to acclimatise to a different way of living, of working and of sharing and communicating. And my hope is that in understanding the commonality of this unexpected yet profoundly interconnected journey, we'll have a greater understanding of our shared humanity. And because of this, we'll look to build on those areas which bring unity, whatever our personal outlook on life. So here are some of the highs, lows and memories from being in lockdown, which I hope you find a helpful reminder that we're not all so very different after all. As an aid memoir, I thought I'd put things under this heading: Lessons Learnt in Lockdown. One of the things which has enabled a greater connection at this time is the very thing which prior to the pandemic was the cause of the greatest separation, and that's mobile technology. Now, I have to say, for someone like me, mobile technology is a necessary evil. I say this because whilst technology has created so many opportunities for communal gathering, it's also been the cause of separation from community. Here's an illustration. Not long ago, when we were able to do this, Linda and myself met in a cafe, and we were just having a break during a shopping trip, and we just had coffee and cake one morning, and as we were just sat there, I looked around this particular coffee shop, and every table was full. And it was full with at least 2 people at every table, but quite a lot were families. And what was really interesting, that on this beautiful sunny day, every table bar the one that Linda and I was at and one other, everybody was on their mobile phone. They were sat in silence looking at stuff on the internet on their phones. And I found that quite a revelation, that despite being in the company of someone that they loved, whether it was a family member or a close friend, someone perhaps who they loved to such an extent that they may have been even willing to give their life for them if that was demanded, these people weren't even prepared to give those people they loved the gift of time. Now, little could I have known just a few years later the value I'd place on mobile technology. And as someone who's never really engaged with technology, I have to say how grateful I am for the ability to be able to Zoom or Team or FaceTime. Over the last few months, WeTransfer has become an integral part of my life, and in recent months, YouTube has almost replaced the Salvation Army songbook as I plan for Sunday worship. One of the areas which has affected us all, though, is the inability to celebrate significant life events, and we're only too aware of how mobile technology has enabled us to support family and friends at such times as this. For Linda and I, one such moment was the birthday of our daughter Rebecca, who celebrated her 30th birthday recently. Naturally, we were unable to travel and meet up, and we needed a way of celebrating the occasion, so we had the obligatory Zoom party. I gotta say, from a catering perspective, life had never been easier, but from a host perspective, this was extremely challenging. Nevertheless, with gifts dispatched and cakes distributed, we sat down as a family and we just enjoyed catching up. We had a walk down memory lane, we had the fully fledged 30th birthday quiz, and there wasn't a need to borrow a garden chair from any of the neighbours to accommodate everyone who was attending. So here's my first lesson from lockdown. Be careful how you use technology. If it's dominating your life to such a degree that it detracts from investing in and building healthy relationships, then do something about it. You see, technology should be a tool to enhance life and not a distraction from life. If this pandemic has reinforced anything, it's the fact we are by nature relational beings. For this reason, the declaration that all unnecessary social contact should cease has been really hard, hasn't it? Despite our access to mobile technology. Just speaking quite personally, but doing so in the knowledge that my experience is a shared experience, I gotta say these last 12 months have been really challenging. Having only arrived in a new location just a few months prior to lockdown, Linda and I had yet to establish the viable support structure that most of us need. By this, I mean the type of relationships that we all take for granted, those relationships which encourage us in our life and our faith journeys. And we were in effect starting out again as most officers do when they arrive in a new appointment. Now I appreciate this will resonate with many because we've got a lot of friends and family who live alone. They're people who live far away from us. We're unable to visit loved ones who are ill, those who are receiving treatment, or maybe those who are living in residential accommodation. And this sense of enforced separation is quite depressing, and I don't use that word lightly. Undoubtedly, the hardest aspect of lockdown is being unable to interact with people, and despite the options mobile technology provides for maintaining contact, real connection requires being in the presence of another, doesn't it? I'm sure you'll all be able to relate to this, and I know we all long for that day when we can once again freely embrace and engage with one another. Now, what this experience has provided me with is this: a deeper understanding of fellowship. Fellowship is not having a common interest. It's having an intentional desire to belong to and be with another. I guess the clue is in the title really, since the root of the word fellow stems from being related, and ship, being a vessel, symbolises the commitment to journeying together in the same direction and with similar purpose. Throughout this whole pandemic, I've been equally blessed and challenged as I've watched communities come together in fellowship, whether it's to applaud the NHS and key workers, whether it's providing for people who are isolated or vulnerable, whether it's people selflessly and generously contributing financially towards a greater good, and that growing tolerance that we've seen between people who may not look like us or even think like we do. From a personal perspective, the pandemic has enabled Linda and I to get to know our neighbours really well as we partied together, we've sung together, we've drank together, and believe me, trying to explain to your neighbours why you're not accepting an alcoholic drink and you're not meaning to be rude because of it was really interesting. We've talked together and we've even prayed for one another. Looking on this burgeoning dynamic of that community was enlightening, as I realised there's a deep-seated desire for fellowship within the human soul. And the lesson that I've learned here is this: fellowship is not a natural outcome of simply being in the same location. Rather, it's something which needs to be desired and invested in if it's to be communally wholesome and beneficial. Another area which has affected so many of us is not being permitted to gather for worship. On our return to the training college following our summer appointment at Dean Bank back in 1989, every member of the session received a memo instructing us that an appointment had been made for each of us to be recorded leading worship. This was a rather bizarre scenario where we were expected to stand in an empty room and lead a meeting whilst one of the training college staff recorded us on a video camera. As you can imagine, it was quite surreal, and I have to acknowledge that I was somewhat bemused by the whole idea. I mean, when was I ever going to be in a situation where I would find myself leading worship from an empty room? Yeah, here we are 30 years later, and my worst nightmare has become a reality. If I'm honest with you, it's a very uncomfortable experience leading worship remotely. And on several occasions I found myself wondering whether we appear more like Richard and Judy than Mark and Linda. And believe me, sitting in front of a camera makes you very self-conscious, as I'm sure those who've recorded themselves for such things as Sunday worship will testify. But here's the thing I've come to realise. It's worth it because it enables others to engage in an act of worship, and it keeps the fellowship connected. As Salvationists, one of the things we've made central in worship is music, and I know from the numerous conversations I've had that we all miss not being able to participate in congregational singing. We all miss listening to live music, particularly music which inspires and stirs the soul. As I mentioned earlier, I'm beginning to get to grips with technology. However, I'm grateful to the ongoing support of both David Smith and Andrew Mayo when it comes to technology, as very often Linda and I sing along to the videos we use on Zoom. And in the early days of using Zoom, there were occasions when we forgot to mute ourselves when we were singing along. This now means that Andrew automatically mutes the speaker, which I'm sure is immensely satisfying for him, and possibly a tradition which may be embedded into most meetings when we return to the halls. One of the more amusing stories about worship, though, as we've been around, is one I heard recently, how one of our fellowship was singing along to the Zoom meeting, only to turn around and find their pets with its paws over its ears. It would seem everyone's a critic. What I love about this story, though, is the reminder that worship at its heart is ever so simple, and the lesson learnt here in lockdown is this: we may have a format for corporate gatherings, but worship is intrinsically personal. Consequently, we can worship anywhere and at any time when we make it about Jesus, because the reality is we never gather for worship, we always gather in worship. I hope these 3 lessons I've learnt in lockdown prove helpful for you in these days, and I trust knowing what you have and indeed are experiencing during these days is not unique to you, and that we are really in this together helps. As someone eloquently explained just a few weeks ago, We're facing the same storm, we're simply in different boats. So before we listen to a piece of music which is not only a favourite of mine, but one which reminds us that beyond the pain of the moment stands the hope of a new life, allow me to try and recap the last 12 months. Number one, we're all older, if not wiser. Number two, we've all experienced a lockdown: birthday, anniversary, Easter, Christmas, harvest, football season and tax year. Number three, most of us have kept our first New Year's resolution ever to eat more and exercise less. Number four, the parents among us who have had to home school our children have realised we don't know as much as we thought we did. Number five, the children amongst us who've had to endure mum and dad's schooling have realised our parents don't know as much as they thought they did. Number six, we've all spent less time in church, yet we've all attended meetings around the world. Number seven, an hour's exercise in lockdown is never enough, whereas an hour's exercise pre-lockdown was excessive. Number eight, key workers are not Timson employees. Number nine, takeaways are classed as essential, whereas clothing is not. And number 10, family has never been more important. Friends, the last 12 months have been challenging, and for some we love, tomorrow will never come. Therefore, those of us who have a tomorrow would do well to think about it, about how precious it is, and how we might best use that time we have. Above all, remember this: family is precious. Meet with them as often as possible. Enjoy laughing together, crying together and learning together. No one has ever said on their deathbed, "I wish I'd spent more time at the office." Technology is a tool to serve and should never become master of our lives. Fellowship is more than a common interest. It's an intentional commitment to being together, and I thank God for every one of you who takes this seriously. Relationship, not activity or even participation, is central to worship. Worship is not what we do, it is who we are because of who He is. So as we listen to this piece of music, this beautiful piece of music entitled Reflections in Nature, I invite you to sit back, close your eyes and give thanks to God for the promise that is ours through Christ, that no matter how dark things may seem today, resurrection day is coming and life will return, because our God is a God of restoration, renewal and reconciliation. Bless you, friends.